UCLA's basketball teams, notice how I said teams need more efficiency and the health to come for some of their key players and star players. Who? Let's dissect it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's your favorite host. It's Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On UCLA. We're ready to get locked and loaded. Just know that this show is free where we get your podcast available for free. Thanks for making it your first listen each and every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. So what am I talking about when it comes to these key players needing to either get a little healthier, play a little better? Well, it comes initially around health. But we're going to start with today Amari Bailey with UCLA men's basketball. Amari Bailey is a key guy. We're all throwing this name around as to the key cog in a UCLA lineup that seems to be missing a key piece from going from good to potentially great and national championship good. They're good. They can beat teams without Bailey, but can you go deep into the grind of the rest of this Pac-12 schedule, to the rest of this Pac-12 tournament schedule, and into March Madness, deep into the tournament without contributions from everybody in every possible way in a big game scenario? Well, Amari Bailey, before he was absent from the lineup ever since the end of the new year from 2022 to 2023, starting in those Washington State games, the Bruins have been without Amari Bailey. They still had a long winning streak. They're playing defense, getting points, steals. They had to grind it out against an SC, had to get it done against Washington State, some big runs to take down Arizona State and Colorado. Got a shorthanded Utah team before falling short against Arizona most recently. Bailey, who last played against UC Davis, kind of wasn't playing like himself. There was a 4-game stretch for Amari Bailey where he went 8 for 28, scoring 18 points total, 4.5 points per game, and it was only about 1 for 4, 1 for 5 from 3 in the last 4 games he played. So I'm not entirely sure that's an injury that kind of flared up and turned himself into not as high quality as it could have been. But the numbers for Amari Bailey before what seemingly looks like he was banged up, 54% from the field, almost 12 points per game, 41% from 3. Even with him averaging overall, if he had all the games together, 9 points per game, averages about 4 boards, gets his hands in the lanes, especially after Mick Cronin crawled out the Bruins back in Vegas and got them locked and loaded. He does have a chance to blow up, has a tendency to blow up once or twice this season when it came to turnovers. 8 in one game, I believe, and 7 in another game. But the ability for Amari Bailey to, one, add size to the backcourt, either at the 2 or the 3, being 6'5", where Singleton's 6'4", but when you're bringing Andrews and McClendon off the bench, those guys are 6'2", 6'1", 6'3", right? You bring in Bailey, and I'm assuming that they'll keep Singleton in the starting lineup and ease Bailey back in, starting from the bench, but getting those minutes that would normally go to Andrews or McClendon first, and give those to Amari Bailey, depending on how the lineup is situated. Bailey, even if he comes off the bench, that's how we're going to play this scenario here in Locked On UCLA. Even him coming off the bench, his key factor for the Bruins will be his scoring. He can play defense, be a little bit of size, get those long arms in the passing lanes, maybe block a shot or two, but his thing will be scoring. He hasn't had to be dynamic this year. When he was in the lineup, he has had some breakout moments. But even him, say he averaged 4.5 points per game. 4.5 points per game, even in those 4 games before he's been absent, before he started missing games after the end of the non-conference season. Even if it was only 4.5 points per game. Let's talk about what the bench has provided for UCLA in every game since Bailey has been gone, which means Singleton shifted to the starting lineup with him shooting all those threes and getting excited and being a nice spark plug for the Bruins. This is what the Bruins have been missing with Bailey. Against Arizona, 4 points from the bench. That was all from McClendon. 7 points from Dylan Andrews. Oh, one guy that was against Arizona State. 0 points versus Colorado. 11 points, which is an outlier on this list for UCLA against Utah in a game they played where Utah was without their best player, and the Bruins won by 19, where they only got 11 points from their bench. 5 points from their bench against USC. 8 points versus Washington, another game where more points, they won by more points. Wazoo, they only scored 2 points. Only 2 points in their 1-point win against the Cougars. So all these close games where Mick Cronin tightens the lineup, he's had fewer and fewer guys to give minutes to. And if he's only trusting 5 guys on the floor, you would love to have a 6th guy he can truly trust between a Bailey and a Singleton, whoever's hot, got the hotter hand playing better. Or if you want to really get crazy in the lineup, and if Abona's in foul trouble and you want to go a little smaller, whatever it is, UCLA has had 37 bench points in 7 games. Amari Bailey averaging 9 points. If he can do 9 points, as he's kind of currently averaging right now, 9 times 7. Well, if you do that math, he would be almost outscoring this UCLA bench by himself if he was able to play. That's how good he would be. Yes. Did I forget how to do 9 times 6? I probably did because, my schooling has been terrible. Jokes? No. But 9 times 6, 54 points. He would he'd go above and beyond scoring this bench, just averaging 9 points per game. Even if he averaged 4.5 points per game, would be close to 30 points extra the UCLA Bruins could have had over these last 7 games. And of course, these guys aren't going to be scoring like McClendon or Andrews. They'll get their shots, as few as they are, cut down basically with Bailey coming back. There is still no word as to him if he's coming back or not against USC. So let's make that clear. I didn't make that clear at the beginning of the pod, but there is still no word if he's going to play or is not going to play against USC. But with him building and returning, I thought, what is UCLA missing and what are they gaining when he comes back, even if it is or is not against USC? His ability to score and extra size, probably coming off the bench to start, will be significant. Lightening the load for some of the other UCLA players like a Jaquez or a Tiger Campbell, who have been relied upon heavily, especially with Bona getting some foul trouble. Nuba even getting in foul trouble against ASU. And Cronin having to throw in Andrews and throw in McClendon, giving them more minutes. Not even putting Abramo Zaka out there, who's the closest in size to Amari Bailey, standing 6'6", the freshman from Italy. Just Bailey's ability to score and be out there and be a presence, an extra presence for the Bruins, can make them go from good, maybe scary, and also scary for the Bruins fans when they can't score a bucket for minutes at a time, but scary good to a top-tier title contender. And that's a very short list this year, or a long list, depending on what your view on this 2023 March Madness tournament. Whatever your view is, it could be a short list or a longer list. UCLA with Amari Bailey is either on the longer list or in the short list, higher up in the rankings by simply him coming back. Is he available to play? Not sure. Mick Cronin was kind of sidestepping, saying he's been participating more in practice based on the reports, and he kind of steps away, lets the trainers do their thing. So for Bailey, no official word, yes or no, just yet against USC. I'm not sure, maybe leaning no, and then he comes back with a little more rest and a full week to build, or maybe he gets cleared before the SC game, gets his feet wet, and then builds further and further for the rest of the season. So for Bailey, a key week to get healthy and recover, but his presence is missed. The scoring alone will be extremely crucial for UCLA, even if he's not averaging 9 a game. If he gives them 4, that is more than what the bench is providing almost on a consistent basis. You can go back and average specifics, but in key games where the games have been close, other than Dylan Andrews' 7 points against Arizona State the other night, the bench has just not provided what they've needed to do. Mick Cronin has not been willing to trust those players off the bench in key moments unless he's absolutely had to. And with Bailey, well, he is a true freshman, yes, coming from Sierra Canyon, but that's a guy who UCLA would treasure and love to have him back in the lineup. They will, but these are the reasons why he is so treasured and will be immediately an impactful player. Even if he's not what he was before getting out and it takes him a minute, he will be truly important for UCLA's success. What's coming up next? Well, another player who's important for UCLA basketball success, UCLA's women's basketball team with Corey Close. We're going to highlight their star Charisma Osborne. What has happened since she's been banged up, missed a game, and came back grinding through? What does she need to do? What do UCLA need her to do in order to be deep in the tournament run good, national championship potential good? We'll talk about that when we tell you more about FanDuel. Yeah, we're talking about FanDuel. Just know we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sports book in America. FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that makes betting on sports fun and easy. New customers, you can join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, $150 for free in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All you have to do is just sign up at fanduel.com/locked on. All you need to know is that FanDuel's got all your favorite bets from money line to point spreads, player props. They've got it all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, playoffs are going on right now, whether you had the Bills, whether you had the Bengals beating them with all their offensive linemen out, whether you had all these things. March Madness coming around the corner. You're going to want to have FanDuel with everything with you guys as well. Just know you don't want to miss out, especially you football fans. Just place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at fanduel.com/locked on. Again, make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the number one in America. Let's get locked and loaded. Moving on with Locked On UCLA, the Bruins. The Bruins on the women's side desperately need a healthy, more efficient Charisma Osborne. What does that mean? Charisma Osborne, the Bruins, they've been playing well, about 3 to 4 wins in a row ever since they lost to Stanford. They beat Cal by 17 in a come-from-behind effort. Most recently went to Washington, won by 4. Another come-from-behind effort in a low-scoring game against the Huskies, 51-47. And then against Wazoo, winning 73-66 out in Beasley Coliseum in Pullman, Washington. UCLA overall sits at 17-3. Number 8 in the country, 6-2 in conference. Their only losses to Stanford and at Oregon State without Charisma Osborne. The Bruins 3 wins in a row, and before they get to a nitty-gritty week where they got a tough week, they got at Colorado this week, at Utah on Sunday, which will be a very sneaky, tough matchup against the Utes Sunday morning on the Pac-12 networks out in Salt Lake City. UCLA, they need Charisma Osborne. I don't want to say play better, but they need her arguably to get healthy. She missed with the shoulder injury. She was all taped up, especially that first game against SC, coming back when it wasn't even sure she was going to play against SC that second game before a big comeback. But Charisma Osborne certainly has clearly not been 100%. Let's tell you about these Charisma Osborne numbers, kind of similar to what I did with Amari Bailey. But Charisma Osborne, since missing that one game, has gone 19 shots made of 72 attempts. That's good for 26% from the floor and 12 points per game in her last 5 games. She has scored 9 points against SC on 2 of 16 shooting, 4 of 18 shooting against Stanford. You can argue USC has given her trouble even before in mid-December when they played good defense. And then Stanford, well, they were swatting shots left and right. You have Cal, where she shot closer to 50%, 17 points and 7 of 15 shooting. But then University of Washington held her to 3 of 12 on 12 points, and then Wazoo 3 of 11 to 10 points. So you've seen her average go from 18 points to 16.5 points per game. She has not once hit what was her average pre-injury when it comes to hitting 18 points per game. Her shooting percentage has gone from 46% to 44%, to under 40% to 39% after a big disparity of 26% and 12 points per game these last 5 games. UCLA, when Charisma Osborne even shoots just 40%, who is a volume shooter, even when she was missing some shots against South Carolina early this year, she shoots a bulk of the shots. You've seen the Bruins, even when they get cold, Corey Close still is watch Osborne when they sometimes look a little bit deer in the headlights, where Osborne just goes and takes shots and tries to make something out of nothing. For Osborne, sometimes she can go a 6 of 18, as she did against South Carolina, or have a poor shooting night where she scored less than 10 points even against the CSU Bakersfield team where the Bruins were able to get a win. But when she's at her best and the Bruins are at the best is when Osborne's efficient, doesn't take a lot of extra help, and then UCLA can get those extra points from all their extra players, from a Hawkes, from a Bessoir, just up and down the list. But it all comes down to Charisma Osborne. Normally, you don't have an X factor be your star player, but the health and the efficiency may be the key to UCLA season to maybe battling and trying to win a share of the regular season Pac-12 title. Considering Stanford lost, if UCLA can win here on out against a lot of tough opponents, including at Stanford, they could win a share of the Pac-12. That's not what I'm saying here, but seeing how up and down and how close it's been on the women's side this year, UCLA can certainly compete for going to an Elite Eight, a Final Four, a national championship run. And it all comes down to Charisma Osborne. When she shoots about 40% or higher, Bruins are unbeaten. These last few games where she hasn't been shooting as efficiently, of course, battling. And defense is key, and all game plans will start with the Charisma Osborne, but something simply hasn't been right with Osborne coming back after missing that game, hurting her shoulder. It was even kind of so 50-50 for the USC game. It doesn't help when you turn around and you get to play Stanford the next week as your first two games, and then USC goes and beats Stanford. So that tells you the quality of the teams in the Pac-12 up and down the board. On the women's side of the bracketology, I believe there's 8 teams right now who are slated to make the tournament from the women's side on the Pac-12. So it's a tough conference, and they're going to need Charisma Osborne to be closer to her first half self, a team that was under the radar, didn't really know what was going didn't know what was going on, but flying under the radar and then vaulting into a top 10 team from unranked, kind of not heralded, and then all of a sudden, boom, top 10 team, getting big wins, competing with South Carolina. 3 quarters, you could say 30 plus minutes, 31, 32 minutes, 31 minutes against Stanford. And sometimes in these late games, you're going to need your best player like Osborne to go get big buckets when Cameron Brink is swatting everything in sight against you. When South Carolina was doing the same thing to you. UCLA fought against Oregon State. They almost came back. Kiki Rice with 20 points there. But UCLA needs Osborne to be efficient. If she's a 40% shooter, UCLA, with her averaging 18 points per game, is, I think, at minimum, an Elite Eight, Final Four team. And depending on which side of the bracket and which matchups they get, they could be on their way to a deeper run to a national championship game. With her playing efficiently, which can help set up teammates when their defense keys on her even more with her having a good shooting night if she can be fully, completely healthy. And this isn't saying anything bad about her playing now, but if they can get that extra, get that next engine, right? Get that, let's go, Charisma Osborne. Beginning of the season, we're probably not as banged up where everybody and every team gets banged up through the attrition of a season. But if she can get back to what she was pre-injury, then UCLA can be all right. They can maybe change what they do a little bit. Defense will have to change what you do. And UCLA will find a way to get themselves into a much more favorable matchup in the tournament, get themselves a favorable line through the bracket to go up to, and hopefully avoid a South Carolina and a Stanford for as long as possible. And then UCLA can go, maybe, men and women, Final Four, maybe. I don't know. We're just throwing that in the air. That'd be a fun March into April. That'd be fun. Either way, we'd enjoy the run. So first, Amari Bailey needs to come back and be an immediate presence for UCLA off the bench. And then for the women, it comes to Charisma Osborne, hopefully finding her way back to a more efficient shooter. Well, she is a volume shooter, a more efficient shooter, and doing it on a consistent basis, hopefully while getting back to closer to 100% for both of these players, Bailey and Osborne. Now moving on to segment 3 of Locked On UCLA, be a shorter segment. Simple football news. You've probably seen UCLA's been throwing 24 offers out there. We're not going to dive too much into that, but we will talk about UCLA's added defense for 23. Is it what you thought? No, it is not a player. It is not a transfer. It is not a preferred walk-on. It's not a new defensive coordinator. It's a new DB coach, cornerback coach, defensive backs coach. Whatever words you want to say, the secondary has a new coach. It's Cody Whitfield. Whitfield comes back. He was a former grad assistant in 2020 to 2021, a former Stanford player, standout there, former receiver and DB at Stanford, safety there. Was most recently at Sac State, who was a very good team in the FCS level, worked with their secondary. So now, after coming from Sac State, a team who is within the final eight of the FCS and their playoffs, comes back to UCLA, comes back to SoCal and says, all right, maybe this is something that can shake up the UCLA secondary. Who knows? But, he was working with a Quantrez Knight, a Quentin Lake back in the 2021 season when he was on the staff back then. Can UCLA, maybe is this something that can change their defense in the secondary? Maybe it turns into a development thing that Chip Kelly wants, books and ball, and development that helps UCLA turn into a better defense. I'm not going to put this all on the shoulders of a Whitfield and McGovern, but it's nice to see a little shakeup. Remember, you had their D-line coach who stepped away, and Coach Chad, and then now you have Whitfield, who is a SoCal kid in high school, a Stanford product, grad, and now comes forward to UCLA to come back for his second stint after being a grad assistant after finishing his master's at UCLA in 2022. Here's a chance for UCLA to maybe go on the development side, right? UCLA is not finding much defense other than Roderick Pleasant, from what I've seen, who is still out there, top 5, will make his decision whether to come to UCLA or somewhere else in the next week. About February 1st is when he's supposed to make his official announcement, whether he's a Bruin or not. Again, UCLA lost down on Leviticus Sua. I believe he went to Arizona, announcing during, I believe, the Polynesian Bowl. So will UCLA miss out? Is this another guy who can maybe at the last minute go tell Pleasant, hey, come on to UCLA? But they're making some moves defensively. D-line coach is out. They got a new DBs coach. Is this the move or moves or beginning of moves that UCLA is making to find the perfect defensive staff, find the right fits, go out and get these higher level guys, and maybe find a defense that they have? I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but the Bruins got a new DBs coach. He's already familiar with the program, with the Chip Kelly tenure. Can this lead to something better or more consistent DB play? We hope so, and that's just more of a news and notes segment to wrap up Locked On UCLA. Whitfield's back. A couple of 24 offers out there to a St. John Bosco back and an offensive lineman. Other than that, UCLA, we'll have some fun shows. SC's coming up for the men's basketball side. UCLA women, they got to play Utah on Sunday. That's a huge game on the women's side. And then softball's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Baseball's coming up. Both teams ranked in preseason publications multiple times. Top 15 for one, number 2 in the country for softball. And then, football, there's bound to be crazy booms or anything different coming in the next couple of days. Well, not next couple of days, but they're all over the place. There's always, you just think there's no football news, and then boom, 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 boom. That's what happens. Thanks for tuning in, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for tuning into this later edition of Locked On UCLA. Get your hands in the air, Bruins fans. Go make Locked On College Basketball your second listen. It's a good show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Meantime, we'll come back tomorrow. We'll have a good show. I think it'll be a very interesting show, preview of USC, and then I will debate, will UCLA, can they be a title contender in this year, full strength, or even not full strength? We'll analyze all those things for UCLA on the men's side. Thanks for tuning in. Hands up, baby. 8 clap time. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fights. Let's go. Let's go. Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer signing off. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.